if we're going to need more revenue, we don't seem to see a lot of more revenue options other than this tax on multimillionaires. And I guess, so what are some of the options that we could realistically see that would generate the kind of revenue we need? And then what might be some of the economic impacts of that we need to be thinking about?
Yeah, so here's the conundrum in the president's budget, or the irony, I should say, is that the tax increases that he has proposed, I mean, he's proposed about $2.5 trillion in tax increases, but the biggest revenue generators in his budget are tax proposals that Democrats themselves have already rejected. Okay, we know that Arizona Democratic Senator Kristen Sinema has rejected any kind of increase in the corporate income tax. The Biden budget proposes an increase in the corporate income tax up to 28%. Okay, she's already rejected that, so that proposal is not going to get through the Senate. The Biden budget proposes a wealth tax on the ultra wealthy. Senator Wyden, Democrat from Oregon, has already proposed that, and that literally died within, I think, 20 minutes of it being proposed. There are a whole bunch of Democrats stepping back and saying, no, we are not going to tax unrealized income. So it's interesting to see. It will be interesting to see what kind of tax increases, what kind of revenue increases, aside from closing the tax gap, that lawmakers in the House and the Senate are going to support. I mean, and I'll say the dirty little word that nobody's talking about yet, but I think that's where we're going to go eventually. And that's a VAT, a value added tax. We're going to tax consumption. And honestly, I think it's probably one of the most efficient ways to tax people, because you can't avoid it. When you're being taxed at the point of purchase, whether it's a luxury home, a luxury boat, a luxury automobile, you're paying that tax right then and there. It makes it a lot harder to hide that. You can't hide your consumption. You can't hide your purchases the way you can hide your income as a wealthy individual. So I'll say it, I think we're headed towards a VAT.
So Steve, one of the arguments about, different forms of increasing revenue that we've heard from a few people over the last few weeks has been, you want to enact some kind of revenue increases that have as little impact on the economy as possible. Now, Tori just mentioned the value added tax, but what are some realistic options that, would have the least amount of economic blowback? Because you also don't want to impact your GDP numbers. You don't want a consequence of any need for increasing revenue to mean that you might get less because we have overall a negative impact on productivity.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a general agreement among economists that taxing consumption is far preferable than taxing income. And it's sort of, to some people, it might sound like a distinction without a difference, but critically, taxing consumption has a more neutral effect on the economy than taxing income, because a vast portion of income is income to capital. And economists know that if you tax anything, you're going to get less of it. And if you tax capital, the investors can simply choose to invest somewhere else. The argument is, well, we can tax labor, tax workers, but they generally don't choose to move somewhere else, meaning to another country. So labor is considered less elastic or less mobile. But investment capital, the dollars that go into buying the plant and equipment and the stocks and the bonds, the financial wealth, that's, there used to be a book called Quicksilver Capital. And then Quicksilver is this notion that something that can flow rapidly and easily from place to place. And that's the concern, is that when you tax income, a portion of that income is capital income, and capital income can go somewhere else. It has the option of investing elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And so by shifting from a income tax to a consumption tax, you can tax the consumption of rich people who have capital income. And the argument is that that's more efficient. The problem, of course, is that a consumption tax is viewed as regressive, because low-income people also consume, and they consume a greater share of their income. And so, the political economic compromise is to somehow figure out how to tax consumption in a way that's not regressive. And typically that's done by providing a rebate so that the low income people either get an exemption of a certain amount or they get a rebate. We could be paid monthly or annually. And so you would offset the cost of the tax for low income consumers, and that credit or deduction or however however it is designed can be done in a way that phases out at higher incomes. And so, there's various ways of, the consumed income tax, and, you can basically have a very short, simple tax form and allow people to simply report their income, and they subtract their savings. And by definition, income minus savings equals consumption. And so in some respects, the income tax and the consumption tax would look similar if done on an individual's tax return. But ultimately, it would be a tax on consumption, whether it's a value-added tax or a consumed income tax.